Alright, it's Saturday, the 18th of December. We are 3/4 of the way through the calendar, only 6 days left to Christmas Eve. Let's find out which beer is awaiting us today. Alright, it's a Lindheim. It's a Lindheim that doesn't have a cork in a cage. Alright. Alright. Successfully poured beer. Awesome. Aha! Okay. It only took 18 days, but I think we've got a Christmas beer. This will be the first dark beer of the calendar, if I'm correct about what this is. Yeah. So I'm getting the caramelly tones. I'm getting the sort of soapy tones of a lager yeast. I'm getting some sort of light malty chocolate. All things that really remind me of a classic sort of a classic dark lager Norwegian Christmas beer. Oh, this is more on the caramel side than the chocolatey side. It's kind of a scale. Some of them can be more chocolatey, some of them can be more spiced, some of them could be more caramelly. This is on the caramel side. Yep. But I do think that it's a lager and not an ale. I just sort of get the lager character. Quite rich. Good amount of sweetness for a that suits the style, like you're expecting that sweetness. I'm getting a bit of a metallic thing on the aftertaste. I'm not quite sure where that comes from. It's kind of a bitterness. Yeah. It came across as metallic in the first sip. On the second sip, it seems more like it's an intentional bitterness. That sort of makes me actually wonder if there's something added to this. Or if it's just intended to be more bitter than usual. I suppose coffee could do you that, but I don't get coffee anywhere else in it. I wonder what that could be. And it actually seems a little bit out of place. It seems out of place. And it is a kind of metallic bitterness. I'm not quite sure what it could be that's giving that. As I drink a little bit more of it... No. It seems like it's going away, but then it comes back on the finish. Quite like a harsh metallic bitterness on the finish. I don't love that. I do not love that. It like invites you in thinking that it's a classic Norwegian Christmas beer on the nose. And it quite reflects that on the body too, until like 3 or 4 seconds out on the body, where that bitterness builds and builds and builds to like a crescendo that you're not really expecting. And it's not the kind of resinous, pleasant bitterness that you get from a West Coast IPA. It's kind of sharp and metallic, and I don't know what it... I have to imagine it's something added to the beer that will do that, but I can't imagine what. I don't get an impression of any kind of addition from the nose. No, the nose just says pure Christmas beer to me. I don't know. I think mask off. Let's have a look at the beer. Yeah, I mean, that's basically exactly what I imagined it looking like when I had the mask on. So no surprises there. It is like almost a over roasted coffee bitterness, like the kind of like over extracted coffee that has been sitting on a hot plate for an hour. It's like burnt and over extracted coffee, and I don't love it. I don't know what it's coming from though. It's that one that has thrown me for a loop. I'm not sure about that. Like otherwise, it's a really pleasant beer. I suspect maybe what's happening here is I'm just not used to this amount of bitterness in this style of beer, and so it's throwing me off in that way. I also suspect that it's intentional. For certain food pairings, especially for Christmas beer, sometimes people really want that bitterness, and so I suspect what's going on here is that bitterness is added intentionally to pair up against some kind of Christmas food. Not sure where exactly that would work best, but yeah. So I mean, I'm drinking it out of context now. I'm drinking it here by itself, and in this context, the bitterness is quite present. But if I was drinking it in the context that perhaps it was intended to be drunk in with a certain dish, then maybe that bitterness would be way more restrained because of the pairing of the food and beer. Let's find out which beer it is. Buddy! Wasn't a Christmas beer at all. It was a brown ale. Well, there you go. There you go. Did not pick that one, huh? No, it just said Christmas beer to me. It just said Christmas beer to me. It is pretty close to a Norwegian Christmas beer. And I stand by it. I mean, to be a brown ale, it's quite lagery. It's a nice brown ale, but it's with lactose. So it's probably something to do with that, which is throwing me off a little bit. Not brewed to pair with any specific food dish, although brown ales are known for being a good food pairing beer. Interestingly enough, the bitterness on the label, it says it's got sort of a 0.5, a 50% bitterness. I would rate this much higher. It's rather bitter. But it's very interesting to me how much that tastes like a Christmas... You know what we have to do? I mean, we have to compare it to a Christmas beer. It's the only fair thing to do. I have to figure out... Because I was fully sold on that being a Christmas beer. So now my mind is just like, okay, I have to figure out what is the difference? What are the notes that are in a Christmas beer that aren't in this? What is the giveaway that I can use next time looking for certain notes that I can find in the Christmas beer that I can't find in this? So let's pull out a Christmas beer and let's taste them side by side. Lucky for me, I have a Sali Jul sitting in the fridge over here. When I went down to pick these calendars up in Stavanger, I stocked up. My favourite store strength Christmas beer, to be honest. This is a traditional Norwegian Christmas beer. They say it's I think it's marked on Untapped as being a Munich Dunkel, but I think it's like ish. Munich Dunkel ish. Alright, so Sali Jul. Yeah, Sali Jul out of the gate is more roasty. Less caramel, and it has the soapy lager notes, which hilariously I totally found in the brown ale, which is an ale, so it's not a lager. Yeah, I think I was being tricked. I think my brain was expecting for it to be... My brain said, 18th of December, this is a Christmas beer calendar. We haven't had a Christmas beer yet. This smells malty. Therefore, it must be a Christmas beer. Therefore, look, you can find those lager notes. Going back, knowing what it is, I can smell it. It's very, very clean for an ale. I don't think there's very much ale fermentation character here. They are incredibly similar. They are incredibly similar. Yeah, so the Sali Jul, it's a little roastier on the nose. It's a little sharper and maybe a little soapier, which is where the lager gets you. But honestly, it's small nuances that I'm talking about here. They're really similar. Really similar to be two in completely different styles, brewed for completely different things. One has lactose added to it. But, so, Sali Jul is quite sweet. It's sweet and biscuity. Has a really nice malt biscuity flavour. But it's sweet in a different way than the brown ale. The brown ale is... I mean, that sweetness is coming from lactose, so it should be different. It's quite a restrained use of lactose. So restrained that you really... it's totally plausible that that is malt sweetness that you're getting and not lactose. The really big difference on the flavour is the bitterness. The Sali Jul does not have that bitterness at all. But the brown ale, it really does have a sharp, assertive kick of bitterness at the end. But yeah, again, just hilarious that brown ale with lactose, traditional Norwegian Jul ale, they're really similar. It's really just like profile differences. Okay, yes, when I really, really analyze it, unblind, I can find a difference between lager and ale. But it's super restrained. It's way down there in the nuances. Otherwise, the difference is that the Salicot, the Saliul, it's just got a roastier profile. Less caramel, more chocolate, more roast, more sort of slight coffee notes. Still quite restrained. It's still a traditional Norwegian Christmas beer. You don't want to go crazy with those notes. But compare it to the Buddy. The Buddy has a lot more caramel and sort of vanilla notes, with the roast being mostly in the background. Well, what have we learned from this? I mean, Lindheim, if you wanted to, you just slap a different label on it. Call it a Christmas beer. No one's going to question that. Tastes like a Christmas beer. It really does. Just that bitterness, which is throwing me off a little bit. Not sure that was entirely intentional this time. It probably could work with as a food pairing, but you'd have to know that bitterness was there, and you'd have to carefully consider what you're pairing it with. That's hilarious. They're so close. They're so close. Who knew? I like it doesn't have Christmas beer written on it anywhere, but I wonder if it is intended to be a Christmas beer. It doesn't say anything on the label about that, so I kind of assume that it's not. And I'm just reading things into it, but either way, super fun. I learned something today. I was looking to do that comparison so that I could learn for future times tasting blind if I could pick out that it was a brown ale or a Christmas beer. What I've learned from that comparison is that no, there is no way. There is no way I would be able to pick out blind. If I did this again, having done that comparison, I would not be able to pick out blind that Buddy was a brown ale with lactose and not a Christmas beer. In this context, I would pretty much always be expecting it to be a Christmas beer. Now I might guess that it could also be a brown ale, but I wouldn't know, because that is totally the profile of a Christmas beer, hilariously enough. The differences just aren't big enough, and the differences within the category of Norwegian Christmas beer are wide enough that this brown ale with lactose fits right in, and no one's going to be questioning it except for that bitterness. Today we learned. Alright, have a great Saturday, and I'll see you on Sunday. Cheers!